Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching Married at First Sight. Let's get to the show and see if anything of interest comes out of my mouth.
Hello.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Likewise, good to see you.
Hi, doggy.
Stay down.
After speaking with Mindy, I understand that the decision to end her marriage to Zach is final.
Come here, let's go in the room, come on.
Mindy's news doesn't surprise me, but I need to speak with Zach to get to the bottom of where things really went wrong.
Awesome. I can't wait for this therapist to talk with Zach because I'm hoping that this therapist can actually ask, because Zach has yet to be asked questions of his experience. A lot of the experts have been talking to Zach instead of listening to him. And so mainly just for my own curiosity, honestly, because the marriage is over between Zach and Mindy. But I'm very curious as to what was going on with Zach. I have my speculations and my hypotheses, but it's really hard to know what's going on because he provides so little data for us. So let's see what happens.
Zach has been going through the motions of being married for whatever his reasons are, but I'm not sure what's going on in his head now.
Sorry, Dr. Viviana, how are you?
That's okay. I'm doing well, thanks.
Good.
I want to know what's going on with you.
Okay. I'm doing well, personally. You know, Mindy and I have our relationship and how we want to kind of move forward things. I guess you don't realize all the different variables that can come into play at any point to have an effect on your relationship.
So, as expected, he's starting with his confusing circular talking that doesn't make any sense to me listening. And I have my hypotheses as to why he would do that. The running hypotheses I have are that he grew up with relational traumas that made it so that he had to be obscure about his communication, or else he would incur some negative consequence from his family, like abuse or something. Another hypothesis that I throw out there is that he might have below average IQ. I have no idea. But there is a thing called IQ that most of us understand. There's a bell curve around the average IQ of 100. And some people have lower IQ, or they have different IQ levels, meaning that they might be geniuses when it comes to music, but struggle with schoolwork or something like that. So there are different aptitudes. And maybe for him, he lacks aptitude or capacity, intelligence capacity, to logic his way through complex situations such as relationships and to be able to communicate that. Another hypothesis is that he's not really in connection with what he wants, and he says a lot of words to appear as though he is answering the question, but he actually doesn't really know how to answer the question because of relational traumas. He's not in connection with who he is. Another possibility is that he, from the beginning, and this is one of my main hypotheses, is that he signed up in good faith to meet his soulmate, and Mindy walked down the aisle, they got married, and pretty quickly he decided, I'm not attracted to this woman. She seems like a nice person, but there is no spark there, and it's never going to happen. There's just no way. She is like not my type. I'm not attracted to her. Her personality, the way she looks, or whatever it was that he thought. But he knows he's being filmed, and he knows that if he says what is really on his mind, everyone's going to hate him in the entire world. Maybe that was his prediction. And so he decided he was going to push all that down and try to make the best of the situation. And because he either had a really hard time with that or his intelligence isn't that high, he didn't have the ability to navigate that situation. So he's not attracted to her. He's trying to, tamp that down. I mean, he did say he wasn't attracted, so he was upfront about that. But he was trying to give the impression that he was open to falling in love and developing a spark. But his behavior did not indicate that. His behavior, according to all the experts and Mindy and all the other people, including the other contestants on the show and me, he exhibited no effort to actually, fan the flames of their relationship. So it could be that he just decided, no, 110%, there's no way this is going to work. But oh my God, I'm on this show. I'll make the best of it. Now, why would someone do that? They might do it because they're trying to avoid being a villain, which makes sense. I would be terrified of that. Or they're trying to prolong their stay on the TV show because they're trying to up their brand on Instagram or something. Who knows? But anyway, so right away he's getting into his confusing talk. Let's see if the therapist can elicit more specific information. Pastor Cal has tried to lock Zach down, but and Pastor Cal was giving a very exasperated vibe towards Zach of just like, I don't understand you, Zach. What is going on with you, Zach? That didn't really work. So maybe this marriage and family therapist can provide a more safe space or have a different vibe with Zach so that it can elicit more information, really just for my own curiosity's benefit.
And coming back from recommitment with, genuine effort and making a point to see her every day. We had dinner together last Monday night. I stayed the night over there Wednesday night. I was going to stay over there Thursday night. I think we've been able to identify it is what it is, throughout and find positive moments. And
Like you just told me a lot of positive things, but I talked to Mindy. She told me what's been going on and that your marriage is over.
Why not just say that?
Right.
I don't understand. Like,
I guess I didn't know what to say.
So another hypothesis is that he learned early in life that he had to be extremely shady, is the word I would put to it, in order to survive. He had to not tell the truth because he had that whole other, what I consider to be a very strange set of behaviors where he pursued what seemed to be a flirtatious romantic relationship with Mindy's friend over text, which is like, why would you do that when you're on a reality TV show? And why would the friend do that? It was a very interesting situation. But, I mean, infidelity happens, of course, but it just it was a very strange situation. So, but if we look at that behavior of deception and lying, and I will say that in the previous episodes when I was reacting, the way Zach tried to manage that lie, because he was caught in a couple of lies, the way he tried to manage that was not intelligent. If you just look at his decisions, they were not smart decisions that he made. Now, there's two different main reasons why someone would do that. One is because of just lack of logic ability, which is a real thing, and we actually measure that in people. But the other possibility is some sort of blind spot or some sort of habitual issue that was developed early in life. When you're abused, you have to dodge and weave a lot, and you might have to lie a lot to get out of trouble and physical abuse. And you might develop this very habitual way of reacting to people. There's another version of that as well, which I've talked about in relation to Michael on the show, that attachment disruptions early in life can actually make it so that it makes it very difficult for you to connect with other people neurologically, because you learn very young in life that you really cannot depend on other people. And so you turn yourself off to other people. That might fit him as well. But I have no idea because we haven't heard anything about his childhood, and he hasn't talked about his inner life at all. But people who have those major attachment disruptions, like being adopted at the age of 2 years old or something, or going into foster care at the age of 1 to 3 years old, people like that often, tragically, because of the abandonment and attachment injuries that they went through early in life, will sometimes have a really hard time understanding other people and connecting with them. So I'm just throwing out a lot of hypotheses. All these, I just have extremely little data to even develop these hypotheses for Zach. Let's see if we can get some more information.
Because we were on a good path, And then she's like, I had 4 things I needed: transparency and honesty, and within hours, trust has been lost, and I don't feel like I can move on in this relationship.
So the face of the therapist, I think, indicates what all of us would be thinking, because he just said, we were on a good path. I'm thinking the therapist is thinking, you were on a good path? One, you were clearly not attracted to her. You didn't live with your wife. You never lived with your wife. You were having at least an emotional affair with her friend, and lying about, at the very least, if you claim it was just a friendship you had with her friend, at the very least you were lying blatantly to your wife about carrying on at least a relationship with her friend. How do you call that positive direction? So I'm guessing that's what the therapist is going to say. Now, all the hypotheses could be present in that. You might lack logic. You might be shady because of childhood traumas. There's just so many possibilities there, but it is very confusing. Let's see if we can get some more data.
It's kind of a bummer, to say the least. I mean, honestly, day and night, my whole thought process was around, how do I fix this? How do I make this right? And it was all Mindy. It was all Mindy in our relationship.
Did you lie to your wife?
No.
You didn't lie to your wife?
No.
Okay, so.
Wow. Okay. So now, this isn't a real therapy session. She's a real therapist, but this is not a therapy session because I don't see any of the indications. For example, confidentiality, one. But also therapy sessions usually begin with, what would you like to get out of therapy? And I'm guessing that question wasn't asked as well. But she is exhibiting her reactivity, her countertransference, if you will. She's starting to laugh kind of in mockery of him. I think a lot of us would do that in this situation. But as a therapist, you want to attenuate those reactions because you want to preserve the relationship. So if she were my trainee, I would say something like, you put your emotions or your reactivity too forward. You might want to wait to show those kinds of reactions because you could jeopardize your relationship with your client if you just start laughing at something that they say. Having said all that, I'm going to laugh at what he just said because she just asked, have you lied to your wife? And he said no, which he has admitted he has lied. So not only has he lied very flagrantly to his wife, but he's admitted that he's lied. And right now he's saying he didn't lie. So this is interesting. It's interesting data that he would say that. Let's continue watching.
You didn't tell her you were talking to this other woman that just happens to be her friend.
Right.
I mean,
I guess I would say very misleading or didn't communicate. I wouldn't, everybody can identify it differently, but I wouldn't say I was just lying to her.
Okay, so people will do that sometimes, and I have found that to be a trigger word, which is lying or liar. And I've talked about this before, that I tend not to use that word because of this reason. People who lie will have a really hard time saying, yes, I lied. And so I'll say things like mislead or untruths. I don't have clients now that suffer from this issue, but when I was in my earlier career, I worked a lot with teenagers, and teenagers lie. And when I would say, sounds like you lied, they'd be, I didn't lie. And it would be such a hard conversation to have. So I ended up just, kind of sounds like you did an untruth there. And they'd be like, yeah, it was an untruth. There's just something about lying that is so shameful or so hard to admit. And so he's exhibiting that, which I will say is an indication of immaturity maybe. It'd be one thing for him to say like, well, I don't feel like I lied. I feel like it was more of I was trying to protect her feelings. But I guess in the strictest sense, yeah, I guess one could say I lied, but I didn't really see it that way. That'd be a more mature way of saying it. He's just like, nope, didn't lie. And then she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I misled. You heard that word. I misled, or I didn't tell her about something. So this is interesting. This is starting to point in the direction. This is data for hypotheses. It's just always speculation. I have no idea. But it would fit the profile of someone that has early childhood issues. The sort of blankness that he exhibits when he is talking about this, and the blankness he's exhibited throughout this whole TV show. The obscurity of who he is. I don't think we've ever seen on this show the real Zach, and I wonder if he knows who the real Zach is. When you're mistreated as a young person, sometimes you're not in connection with the real you. And so you're just kind of drifting from situation to situation, never really involving yourself and never being involved with. It's a very isolating experience. But anyway, let's continue watching.
I guess I'm confused by that. Maybe it's an indirect lie, but there was lying involved, and I guess you don't think that there was lying?
I guess I just look at it differently.
Why was it so hard to just tell her? Like, Lindsay told me that you had something happened with a guy who wanted to pick you up. Why not just say that?
I didn't want to throw all these people under the bus because personally, I hate the confrontation. That was just me honestly trying to take control of the situation and just trying to wipe it under the rug and be able to move on.
But he says he hates confrontation. All right, we're getting some more data that will help us conceptualize his behavior in this season. So he hates confrontation. So that again points to mistreatment growing up and issues of wanting to please other people. When there's this paradox that will happen for some people is that as they're mistreated, they develop a deep fear of disappointing other people and conflict. But because they're in a constant state of trying to manage conflict and not disappoint other people, they will often disappoint other people. So he just said that when he learned about his wife in contact with her ex, he learned Mindy was texting with his ex. Instead of, as the therapist was saying, just say, hey, by the way, Lindsay told me you're in contact with your ex. That kind of scares me. That hurts my feelings. Can you tell me what's going on there? That would be the rational, mature, differentiated thing to do. Instead, he kept his knowledge of that a secret and brings it up to Mindy by saying, I know something about you. I'm not going to tell you who told me it, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I know you did something bad. And that's all he said. And he was going to stick with that for the rest of his life until Mindy actually found out and confronted him, and he actually had to come clean. So that's a weird thing to do, right? Well, if deep down he was hurt by that, which it's hard to imagine because he didn't exhibit any care about his relationship with Mindy. But let's, for the sake of this thought experiment, let's say he was hurt by that his wife was in contact with her ex, and he wanted to address that. But because he's terrified of being upfront about that in the way that I laid out, just like, hey, I learned that you were in contact with your ex, he's so scared of that confrontation, he does this extreme roundabout way of communicating it, of I know something about you, but I'm not going to tell you what it is, and that's the end of the conversation. Maybe that's what was going on. Who knows? Let's continue watching.
So do you feel like you respected Mindy throughout your marriage?
100%.
So then how would you explain all of the time and energy that went to talking to one of her best friends?
So now this session is starting to look similar to the other experts on this show, Pepper and Pastor Cal, in that it's basically just berating him, which, maybe the producers want to do. But this is a therapist, and she's like, do you think you've been respectful of your wife? Now, maybe you out there would like to say that to Zach because you're upset at Zach, but that's not what therapy is. In therapy, therapists don't say, do you think you have been respectful to your wife? There's a way of getting at what you're trying to get at. If you're trying to get the person to reflect, there's a much more effective ways of getting people to reflect. Telling someone you were basically, because her question reveals that she believes that Zach has been disrespectful by asking the question in that way. Do you really think that you've been respectful of your wife? It's clear that the therapist believes, essentially, there's an accusation there, you were disrespectful to your wife. Well, when you just accuse people of things, they tend to get defensive. So it's not usually helpful if you're actually trying to help someone realize something. But anyway, I am curious as to what he says to this.
I wouldn't say there was a ton of energy that went into that.
But it was energy that didn't go towards Mindy. For all intents and purposes, it seems like there were 3 people in this relationship at times when, you and Mindy really needed to be able to focus on each other.
Sure.
And you held that secret. I'm still trying to figure out how you would prioritize Lindsay over Mindy. There's something weird there. I don't know what, but there was a loyalty to Lindsay that I wish had gone towards Mindy.
Right. And there comes that message from the therapist of her wishes. Therapists don't usually communicate that. They would say something like, or what I might say is, I'm just confused because first off, I would ask Zach, do you want to talk with me? And if he said yes, I'd proceed and I'd say, would you like to explore what happened to maybe discover more things about yourself? If he said yes, then I would continue. And I would say, in this moment, I would say, well, I don't really understand. If you say you were trying to work on your marriage with Mindy, but you were having this backdoor conversation frequently with Lindsay, her friend, and it seemed to be a little romantic. I'm just going to be honest with you. And I'm not saying you did a wrong thing because, this is your life. But I will say it's confusing because you say you were trying to work on your relationship with Mindy, but that doesn't sound like behavior you were trying to work on your relationship with Mindy. It was bound, anyone would predict that that situation was going to blow up in your face. It was going to make you and Lindsay look like deceptive people. If you're trying to hide a relationship with another woman, it usually indicates you have a reason to hide it and that it wasn't just innocent. I'm not berating you, so I'm always clear to say that as a therapist because that's not my job. But I'm just confused because I wonder what's going on there. Let's explore that. Let's explore why you would have had that blind spot, why you would have been compelled to recreate a situation. Maybe it was subconscious. People will look at Zach on the internet and think, well, he's a gaslighter, he's narcissistic, he's a psychopath. And that could be. He could be a psychopath. He wouldn't be completely outside of the profile because oftentimes psychopaths will shoot themselves in the foot. They almost always do. They're not very good at hiding their tracks, if that makes any sense. But anyway, that's a pretty rare condition. It's much more frequent that these sorts of odd, self-destructive and destructive to other people behaviors usually come from syndromes developed early in life, like avoiding conflict so much so that you create conflict. Let's see if I wish he would have asked that question a little differently to get Zach to talk more. I'm guessing Zach's going to shut down. The other hypothesis that I'm starting to get a little bit, because this is the first time he's really had a in-depth conversation with someone outside of Mindy. With Mindy, he had reasons to maybe be coy because deep down he's like, well, I'm not attracted to this woman. But with the therapist, this is just a one-shot conversation. So presumably he could be more honest, and he's still not being very honest. He's still not being forthcoming. Why would that be? Is it because he is so walled off because of early childhood trauma from other people that he's not even really listening to other people? Is it because he has to bolster his own self-esteem on such shaky ground that he just believes his own hype? I don't know. Those are just other hypotheses to add to the long list. Let's continue watching.
Figure out how you would prioritize Lindsay over Mindy. There's something weird there. I don't know what, but there was a loyalty to Lindsay that I wish had gone towards Mindy.
So it just ends there with Zach just staring back at the therapist. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's done that many, many other times, including the divorce ending conversation with Mindy. He just stares blankly back. So we're kind of left still on the lurch there, not knowing what's going on inside of him. Is he thinking, well, I just have to preserve my image on this show, and I'm not smart enough to figure out how to navigate my way out of this, so I'm just going to not say anything. But he appears to be unemotional. But, some people are very emotional and they hide it really well. Is it that he is so afraid of confrontation that he just is shutting down because it's like, I need to avoid conflict, so I'm just going to shut down and not say anything at all? Is he narcissistic in the sense that he's like, yeah, I'm superior, I'm above it all? He certainly didn't come across that way to me. I don't know, maybe we'll never get answers to any of these questions or any good data for any of my hypotheses. So Anyway, all right. Well, if you haven't done so yet, you could like the video. That would be cool. You could subscribe. You could hit the bell. You could comment below. You could become a patron on Patreon. And you could take care of yourself and other people because you deserve it. You really, really do.